Have you ever felt drained just from dealing with someone who mentally exhausts you? Someone who makes you doubt yourself, feel inadequate, or forces you to justify things that need no defense? Maybe it's a family member, a colleague, or even someone you once trusted. The sad truth is, the more you give them space, the more they wield your kindness as a weapon. But the beautiful truth is, change one thing, just one, and they lose their power to hurt you. That change doesn't come from shouting or trying to make them understand you. It comes from the moment you stop reacting the old way. The Stoics didn't change the external world to find peace. They changed their perspective, their responses, their way of holding on to calm. That deliberate silence, that unshowy strength, is what makes toxic people unable to reach you. This video is your map from being manipulated to standing in your own freedom. A path not loud, not vengeful, not explanatory, but profoundly effective. If you've ever had someone make you lose yourself, stay. Listen not just with your ears, but with your mind and courage. Because after applying the principles in this video, even the most toxic people will no longer control you. And if you believe peace begins within, hit the like button as a declaration. Don't forget to subscribe to continue this journey of cultivating calm with Stoic wisdom every day. Number 1, forgive quietly, but never reopen the door. Forgiveness isn't an event, it's a silent decision. It doesn't need fanfare, confirmation, or thanks. Forgiving doesn't mean approving what someone did or denying the pain they caused. It simply means you no longer want to carry that anger. You choose to let go to free yourself. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it certainly doesn't mean allowing. The Stoics forgive in silence, but never reopen a door they've locked. In Stoic thought, forgiveness is an act of agency, not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve peace of mind. They don't need to apologize, change, or understand. Forgiveness is a one-way act, a moment you release the chains binding your mind. But once you forgive, the harder lesson is, don't reopen the door just because you feel empty. Toxic people have a subtle skill. They create a presence that makes you miss them, blurring familiarity with true value. They don't apologize. They appear when you're vulnerable. They don't regret. They're sweet when you're unsteady. If you've reopened the door thinking maybe they've changed, you know the deep disappointment when things revert or worsen. The Stoics don't expect others to change. They change themselves to avoid that cycle again. Silent forgiveness is mastery. You don't need to post online that you've moved on. You don't need to meet them to clear things up. You don't need closure, because closure doesn't come from outside. It comes when you face the truth and accept that this person doesn't belong in your next chapter. Forgiveness unburdens you. Keeping the door closed protects your inner boundaries. Someone who didn't value you doesn't deserve another chance to hurt you. The Stoics don't dwell in hatred. They know it's a form of bondage. But they aren't naive. They look at actions, not promises. They observe objectively, unclouded by emotion. If reality shows no change in the other person, they need no further reason to keep their distance. Silence is the decision. Walking away is the answer. Not looking back is the end. Many think staying in touch shows maturity. But true maturity is knowing who no longer belongs in your mental space and honoring that choice. Not every door needs reopening, even if the knock is soft. What once stole your peace will do so again, if you let it. If you're wavering, unsure whether to forgive, reconnect, or give another chance, pause and ask, am I opening this door because they deserve it, or because I'm feeling weak? If it's the latter, you know what to do. Weakness isn't a crime, but letting it lead is a mistake. Forgiveness is strength. Not returning is wisdom. Picture standing before an old door. You know what's behind it: disrespect, instability, disorientation, manipulation. Yet a voice whispers, this time might be different. The Stoics aren't swayed by emotional whispers. They live by reason. And reason says, if you were burned there before, don't play with fire again. If you've forgiven someone only to be hurt again, Comment one word, lesson. It's not failure, it's a lesson, and it only matters if you choose not to repeat it. Hit the like button if you're in the phase of letting go silently and need a nod that you're doing right. And if you want to keep mastering yourself, setting boundaries, and living with clarity, subscribe. We don't need more people to disorient us. We need more clarity in every step. Number 2, their power ends where your reaction stops. Every time you react to a toxic person, you're fueling their game. You think you're standing up for justice, defending yourself, or fighting to be understood. But in reality, you're giving them exactly what they want: your energy, your attention, your loss of control. A Stoic doesn't react impulsively, not because they're indifferent, but because they deeply understand a principle. Another's power only exists in the space you grant them through your reaction. When you stop reacting, the game ends. Toxic people aren't strong. They just know how to trigger your unhealed scars. They stir up fears of abandonment, of being misunderstood, the obsession to prove yourself. They don't need reason, a glance, an explanation, a burst of your anger. That's enough for them to control you without lifting a finger. But when you learn to pause, observe, stay silent, and not react, you do something they can't handle. You take back the key to your emotions you once mistakenly handed over. One of the most common mistakes is thinking silence equals defeat. But in Stoic philosophy, silence is the pinnacle of self-control. Reacting is instinct. Restraint is strength. When you don't react, you're not suppressing anger. You're sitting with it, observing it, understanding its mechanics, and letting it burn out on its own. You don't deny your emotions, but you refuse to let them act for you. That's the moment power shifts, from them to you. Think back to the last pointless argument you got into. You felt provoked. You got angry. You wrote a long message to show them. You said things you didn't truly mean. And in the end, you didn't feel better. You felt empty, exhausted, and out of control because you let someone else dictate your emotions. A Stoic doesn't do that. They always hold the reins. No one can make them lose their temper or explain themselves unless they choose to. When you don't react, you create a unique space, a quiet zone where you can assess, is this really worth sacrificing my peace for? If the answer is no, you step back. You don't speak, don't justify, don't engage. And here's the interesting part. The less you react, the fewer toxic situations you're drawn into. Manipulators lose interest in those who aren't easily controlled. They'll naturally exit your life when they can't dictate your emotional rhythm anymore. A practical exercise. When you feel anger rising because of someone, pause for 3 seconds and ask, am I about to act because I want to, or because they just triggered an emotion in me? Those 3 seconds are the difference between instinct and choice, between reaction and reflection. And a Stoic always chooses reflection, not to avoid, but to pick the right moment, method, and mindset to respond if necessary. Strength doesn't lie in what you say. It lies in whether you need to say anything at all. A Stoic doesn't need to win arguments. They need to maintain inner stability, so they learn to let go. Letting go isn't surrender. It's refusing to play a game where the outcome is always a loss, even if you're right. You're right, but you lose sleep. You're right, but you're exhausted. You're right, but you're dragged into someone else's spiral. That's not victory. That's a failure of self-mastery. If you're in a relationship where you're constantly reacting, feeling manipulated, challenged, or provoked, step back and ask, how am I feeding this cycle? If the answer is, I keep explaining, proving, or protecting my image, then you know it's time to stop reacting. When you withdraw your reaction, toxic people will try everything to pull you back. They'll call you cold. They'll play the victim. They'll tug at your emotions. But you must stand firm. A Stoic doesn't react to everything. They only respond to what's worthwhile. They live by the principle, what I can't control shouldn't control me. And when you apply that, something miraculous happens. The people who once drove you crazy start to fade away. Not because you fought them, but because you stopped playing their game. If you've ever fallen into the trap of responding to prove you're right, comment one word, self-mastery. Like this if you're practicing restraint as a new form of strength, and share this video if you know someone caught in an unworthy battle with a negative person. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring ways of thinking and acting that free you from external control. Because you can't stop others from speaking, but you can choose not to let them sway your inner state. Number 3, toxic people feed on your energy. Starve them with silence. Toxic people don't thrive on reason, they thrive on your reactions. They don't need your love, understanding, or companionship. The only thing they need is the energy you give off every time you react, lose your temper, justify yourself, or try to explain who you are. For them, every time you lose your composure is a victory. Every time you speak up to defend yourself is a confirmation that they still control you. And that's why your silence is the one thing they can't swallow. A Stoic understands that energy is the spirit's greatest asset. It's not something you can squander on unworthy situations. Every time you lose control, you lose energy. Every time you let your mind get dragged into provocation, you disconnect from yourself. Toxic people feed on that very weakness. They don't need to fight you, they just need to disorient you. Observe closely. When you ignore a provocative criticism, they lose control. They get louder. They shift to blame. They play the victim. Why? Because you just did what they fear most. You withdrew your energy. A Stoic doesn't stay silent out of passivity. They stay silent to actively cut off the supply to an endless game. They know a manipulator can't manipulate if you stop providing what they're manipulating, your emotions. Silence, when paired with awareness, isn't avoidance. It's a clear statement that you're no longer participating in their toxic ecosystem. No more arguments, no more explanations, no more proving you're right. You don't reply to a message, not out of anger, but because you see no need. You don't step into a dispute, not because you've lost, but because it's not worth your inner peace. And that's what restores your power. Toxic people can't stand emptiness. They need your engagement. They need your presence. They need your reply. They need your reaction, even a small one. So when you start redirecting your energy inward, they panic. They think you're scheming. They assume you're playing games. But the truth is, you're just choosing to live in a way that doesn't waste energy on what doesn't help you grow. A Stoic doesn't need to defeat anyone. They just need to preserve themselves in any circumstance. And silence is the invisible armor they choose to wear when facing chaos. You don't need to announce, "I'm going silent on you." Just do it. No need to block. No need to call them out. Just disappear at the right place and time. Sometimes the most civilized thing you can do with a toxic person is to not give them another second of your mental space. They might call you arrogant. They might label you cold. But a Stoic doesn't live to correct others' perceptions. They live to uphold their principles. And if silence helps you maintain self-mastery, it's the right choice, no matter who misinterprets it. A practical habit to start is creating a no-response buffer. When someone says something that irks you, instead of replying on impulse, pause, breathe, acknowledge your emotions. And instead of responding, reflect. Ask, if I say nothing right now, what's the worst that could happen? And is that worth breaking my calm? 9 times out of 10, the answer is, it's not worth it. That's when you keep your silence, not out of avoidance, but because you see the psychological game at play and no longer want to be an actor in an old script. Silence has a powerful side effect. It mirrors the other person's chaos. When they can't pull you into their game, their manipulative tactics stand exposed, and if others are watching, they'll start to see who's truly in control and who's actually unraveling. A Stoic doesn't need to make a scene to prove they're right. They just need steadiness, and true steadiness never needs noise. If you've ever thought silence was weakness, think again. It's the highest form of strength, the strength of someone who isn't swayed by external waves, the strength of someone who knows what's worth speaking up for and what deserves to be met with. Complete silence. If this resonates and you realize you've given too much energy to those who don't deserve it, comment one word, reclaim. Like this if you're practicing silence as a strategy, not a passive reflex. and share this video with a friend struggling to break free from someone's negative influence. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to continue this journey of building resilience, calm, and inner freedom for yourself, not for anyone else. Number 4, boundaries don't need justification. One of the most common illusions that keeps us trapped in cycles of hurt is the belief that if I want to set a boundary, I must explain it clearly, logically, and convincingly so others understand. But the truth is, not everyone wants to understand. And most people who demand explanations are the ones who didn't respect your boundaries to begin with. The first thing you must accept is this: boundaries aren't for approval, they're for enforcement. A Stoic doesn't set boundaries to be praised as strong or awakened. They set boundaries because they value their inner peace. Boundaries aren't harshness or distance. They're a silent declaration that you respect yourself enough not to let others cross your limits. You don't need to shout to protect yourself. You just need to be clear with yourself about what's acceptable and what no longer fits. The problem is, we're used to living in a culture of people-pleasing. We feel guilty saying no. We feel selfish declining a meeting, a message, or a relationship that no longer serves us. But face the truth. Every time you break your own boundaries just to make others comfortable, you're telling yourself their peace matters more than your mental health. A Stoic never lets themselves live with such inverted values. You don't need to write a lengthy letter. You don't need to detail why you need space. You just need to act consistently with the boundaries you've set. Sometimes leaving a message on seen is enough. Sometimes not answering a call is crystal clear. Sometimes a quiet withdrawal says it best. I've chosen to protect my calm, and I don't need your agreement to do so. The key to an effective boundary isn't whether you speak it, but whether you uphold it when it's tested. Toxic people won't easily accept boundaries. They'll react. They'll accuse you of changing. They'll call you cold, heartless, even selfish. But understand this: when someone sees your self-care as an offense, that's the clearest proof you need that boundary more than ever. Imagine you're a house. Does your door have a lock, a fence, limits on who can enter? Of course, you don't open your door to a stranger at 3 a.m. just because they say, "I just want to talk." So why in your mental life do you let anyone access you anytime, with any attitude? Mental boundaries are like physical ones. You have full control over who gets in and who stays out. A Stoic practices saying no calmly. No justification, no anger, no need for sympathy. They don't live to make others comfortable. They live to maintain inner stability. If you say no but attach an apology or a roundabout explanation, you're eroding your right to protect yourself. You don't need a valid reason to want peace. You don't need permission to live with limits. If someone truly cares about you, they'll respect your boundaries without needing a defense. If they react negatively, see it as a sign they're not ready to stay in your inner circle. And that's okay. A mark of maturity is daring to let mismatched people leave or be shown the door without guilt. When you start setting boundaries without justifying them, it'll feel hard at first. You'll fear being misunderstood, judged, or slandered. But remember, a Stoic doesn't live to manage others' impressions. They live to uphold their character. And every time you hold a boundary despite external pushback, you're forging one of the most valuable virtues: courage. If you've ever felt awkward wanting to set a boundary but got trapped in endless explanations, comment one word: enough. Like this, if you're learning to say no without apologizing. And if you want to continue this journey of mastering self-control, clarity, and calm in draining relationships, subscribe to the channel. Because you can't control how others view your boundaries, but you can control how you uphold them through consistency, not explanations. Number 5, absence reveals the truth. One of the most powerful tools to see a relationship's true nature isn't arguing, talking it out, or trying to have an honest conversation. It's absence. Step back in silence. No announcements, no threats, no drama. Then watch. Those who value you for who you are will seek you with sincerity. Those who only want to manipulate, control, or maintain power will reveal their unease when you no longer respond as before. Absence doesn't change a relationship's nature. It only clarifies it. A Stoic doesn't need promises, They need actions. They don't care for "I'll change." They observe what you do when they stop texting first, stop cleaning up your careless messes, stop carrying the relationship. When they withdraw, it's not to punish you, it's to see clearly. If I stop initiating, what's left? Absence is a cold mirror. It doesn't embellish, excuse, or salvage. It shows you exactly what you need to see. When you're no longer there to mediate, endure, explain, or yield, who steps forward to nurture the relationship? If no one does, the answer is clear. That relationship only existed because of your one-sided presence. Toxic people hate absence. They need your reaction, your presence, your readiness to jump back into their cycle of manipulation. But when you quietly vanish, they unravel. They seek you, not out of care, but out of lost control. They'll feign concern, bring up old memories, offer half-hearted apologies. But if you're awake enough, you'll see. True affection doesn't fear distance. Control crumbles without a response. A Stoic doesn't rush back just because someone knocks. They let time test. They watch for consistency. They don't seek sweet words. They look for signs of genuine change. And if nothing changes, they don't regret. They know someone who's only kind when you're always there isn't sincere. They love your service, not you. Absence also lets you reflect on yourself. It gives you space to ask, am I holding on to something just because I fear loss? Or is it truly worth keeping? When you step out of the chaos, you see clearly those draining conversations, the constant feeling of being judged, hurt, or blamed. Those don't come from love. They come from a warped dynamic you've helped sustain by staying patiently present. So withdrawing is the first step toward a healthier reality. A truth to face. Some relationships only exist because you don't leave. They don't grow, heal, or uplift you. They linger because you keep yielding, sacrificing, enduring. But when you quietly walk away, you'll see who truly cares. Not because you play a role in their life, but because they value you as a person. If you're stepping back from a relationship you've strained to maintain, know this: it's the most critical test. The reward isn't from them, it's from you. You reclaim your mental space, restore your self-respect, and see the world clearer without the blur of chaotic emotions. Remember, absence doesn't need to be permanent to work. Sometimes a few days of not replying, not rescuing, not mediating is enough for things to take shape. And if you fear loneliness, remind yourself, peaceful solitude is better than being surrounded by people who make you doubt yourself. A Stoic doesn't choose isolation, but they understand the value of purposeful detachment. They use silence like medicine, not to escape reality, but to face it with clearer eyes. Once you learn to observe others through the lens of absence, you'll never see relationships the same way again. If you're in the process of stepping back to gain clarity, comment one word: seeing. It's not coldness, it's a process of illumination. Like this if you've uncovered someone's true colors by no longer reaching out. And if you want to keep learning how to master your mental space through intentional detachment, subscribe to the channel. The path to clarity doesn't always need noise. Sometimes silence is the deepest revelation. Number 6, guard your attention like a fortress. If there's one thing a Stoic emphasizes, it's that your attention is the foundation of every experience. What you focus on becomes your world. In today's world, where every phone notification can pull you off track and negative people know how to steal the spotlight, guarding your attention is like defending a precious fortress. A Stoic doesn't let anyone wander into their mind unchecked. They guard the gate of their awareness like a sentinel, alert, disciplined, and uncompromising. Toxic people know this well. They don't need to control you physically, just your attention. They plant vague remarks, half-hearted situations, or unsettling silences that keep you analyzing, worrying, overthinking. And the strange thing is, even when they're not around, they still occupy a chunk of your mind. It's an old but effective tactic, keeping you preoccupied to the point of losing focus on what truly matters. A Stoic doesn't play that game. They know you can be poor in money or time, but if you're poor in focus, you're truly impoverished. All growth starts with reclaiming your attention. You choose who gets a seat in your mental conversation. You filter which topics deserve your mind's investment. You don't let a meaningless comment from the past linger into the present. And above all, you don't hand over power just because someone is louder. Guarding your attention isn't just about silencing phone notifications or limiting social media. It's about actively deciding what deserves space in my mind. Picture your attention as a minimalist room where everything has a place and purpose. When someone enters with chaotic energy, drama, or subtle criticism, you don't need to be polite and open the door. You just need to know how to say no. No is enough. No is your right. A practical exercise each morning, write down, what will I focus on today? When you catch your mind drifting to a negative conversation or a comment that stings, pause and ask, is this on my priority list? Does it help me live more deeply, more steadily? If not, dismiss it like you'd swipe away a spam notification on your phone. No emotion, no malice, just an act of protecting your mental safe zone. A Stoic doesn't hate anyone, but they don't let anyone live rent-free in their head. If someone doesn't bring clarity, value, or genuine love, they don't get the privilege of occupying your focus. The more you let others breach your mental boundaries, the further you stray from your true self. All confusion, all depletion, it starts with forgetting to lock your mind's door. A relatable example. You're working, and an acquaintance sends a cryptic message, a vague question loaded with subtext. Instead of continuing your task, you stop. Your mind drifts. What did they mean? How should I respond? Are they upset? In minutes, they've stolen your productivity, presence, and peace, without even being there. That's why you must guard your attention like a fortress. Once you master your attention, toxic people will find you hard to manipulate. They'll call you cold. They'll say you're not the same. And that's when you know you're nearing freedom. You're no longer swayed by others' insecurities. You're no longer caught in emotions that aren't yours. You no longer need to know what others think of you because you're too busy living by your values with full focus. If you find yourself constantly pulled into draining conversations, messages, or memories, comment one word, no rent. Like this if you're learning to manage your attention like you manage money, with purpose, principle, and no waste. And if you want to dive deeper into building inner clarity and resisting external distractions, subscribe to the channel. Because only when you protect your attention can you truly protect your life. Number 7, you don't owe closure to the one who broke you. One of the main reasons people stay trapped in toxic relationships is the concept of closure, the so-called ending. They wait for an apology, a final conversation, a rational explanation to let go without lingering doubts. But the truth is, you don't need closure from the person who broke you. You don't owe anyone a graceful breakup, especially not someone who never gave you a decent relationship. A Stoic knows closure doesn't come from outside. It doesn't come from their words or from hashing it out. It comes when you stop and choose your peace over chasing reasons why things ended the way they did. Some questions don't need answers. Some pains don't need analysis. Some doors you close not out of anger, but because you realize that hurt isn't worth revisiting. Toxic people are masters at luring you back with the promise of closure. They bring up old issues, suggest one last talk to clear things up, or even feign remorse to open the door to dialogue. But they don't want closure. They want another chance to tap into your emotions. They want to know they still have influence. And if you agree to that conversation, you risk falling back into the same old cycle, where you speak from the heart and they're just testing your reaction. A Stoic chooses to walk away in silence, not out of avoidance, but because they no longer need to explain themselves to those who never listen. They don't need to craft a perfect ending for someone who treated them unfairly from start to finish. They understand. Maturity isn't about demanding justice through words, but knowing when to stop expecting it from a place that never offered it. You don't need to be understood to heal. You just need to accept that not everyone is mature enough to give you a decent explanation. And that doesn't diminish your worth. It only reveals their limits. When you let go of needing closure from the one who hurt you, You cut the final emotional tie, the one that kept you bound to the past. Remember, you write the ending, not them, not the final talk, not the last message. The ending is written when you choose to let go, not because you stopped loving, but because you love your peace more. You can forgive without meeting again. You can find closure without their closure. You can move on without an apology. Sometimes the deepest forgiveness is when you stop demanding anything. No answers, no blame, no expectations. You simply stand up, walk away, and let the rest fade into the past where it belongs. And if one day they come back wanting to explain why things happened, remember, someone truly remorseful doesn't need a stage to explain. They quietly take responsibility. Those seeking to regain control will always show up just when you're at peace, testing if you've truly moved on. Your silence, then, is the clearest sign you've written the story's final chapter. If you're still waiting for someone to end things properly so you can find peace, know this: peace doesn't come from their words. It comes from your decision to stop giving power to someone who shattered you. You don't need them to play the good guy at the last minute for you to walk away. You just need to know you stayed long enough, tried hard enough, and now it's time to close that door. No ceremony, no reasons. A Stoic isn't heartless. They're just strong enough to choose what's right over what's familiar. They know the more you talk, untangle, or dig into the past, the more stuck you become. So they choose brevity, clarity, and decisiveness. No response, no explanations, no need for closure, just living true to their values. If you're waiting for someone to help you close an old chapter, ask yourself, how many chances have I given them to say something kind? And what did they do with them? If the answer is they ignored, dismissed, or repeated their mistakes, then you know. Closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you. From the moment you stop waiting, comment one word: I end. If you're deciding you don't need one more final talk, like this if you found true freedom by stopping the search for a reasonable ending from an unreasonable person. And if you want to keep learning how to heal from within, without needing permission or validation from those who left, subscribe to the channel. Because true peace doesn't start when they come back. It starts when you no longer hope they will. Number 8, you are not meant to stay where you are disrespected. There's a simple truth that's hard to accept. You weren't born to live in places that make you question your worth every day. You have no obligation to stay in a relationship, a group, or an environment where respect is absent or only given when you're compliant, enduring, and silent. A Stoic understands. Respect isn't a reward, it's a foundation. Without it, you don't need to stay. Disrespect isn't always loud. Sometimes it comes as offhand remarks that shrink you, as dismissals, cold responses, or indirect comparisons that leave you sidelined without explanation. And you stay because you think, maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Or worse, do I deserve this? The answer is no. No one deserves disrespect, and you're not obligated to get used to it. A clear sign of mental maturity in Stoic philosophy is recognizing where your dignity no longer fits and having the courage to leave. That's not arrogance. It's a soul's self-defense, knowing its worth. You can't truly love yourself if you keep forgiving places that continually hurt you. Forgiving is one thing, but returning, staying, enduring, hoping, and being disappointed again, that's self-inflicted harm. Toxic people don't always hurt you with harsh words. They can do it with silence when you need their voice, with a cold glance when you need warmth, by forgetting you while they're busy with their lives, only returning when they need something from you. And you stay because you believe something beautiful once existed. But remember, love can't survive in disrespect. No matter how sweet the memories, if the present makes you feel small and invisible, the past can't justify staying. A Stoic doesn't let nostalgia control the present. They honor memories but live in reality. And the reality is, if you must constantly justify your existence in a relationship, you're not in love. You're in a battle. No one can maintain inner peace in such a fight. Real love doesn't make you afraid to express your feelings. A healthy group doesn't force you to hide your true self. A true environment doesn't demand you wear a mask daily. Respect isn't extravagant. It's when someone listens without interrupting, doesn't turn your confidences into jokes, doesn't dismiss your sadness because everyone's tired, or use your mistakes as leverage in arguments. If you're not getting these basics, stop thinking you're asking too much. You're not asking. You're recognizing your true worth. You weren't born to be trapped in a dynamic where you must beg to exist authentically. You were born to live fully, with emotions, dignity, and mental freedom. That only begins when you dare to leave places that make you feel not enough, whether it's an old relationship, a prestigious job, or a once close friend group. If respect is gone, you don't need to stay. Many stay because they fear being called selfish, ungrateful, or a quitter. But understand, you're not selfish for leaving to protect your mental health. You're not ungrateful for refusing unfair treatment. You're not quitting when you choose yourself after countless efforts for others. A Stoic doesn't leave in anger. They leave in the quiet certainty of someone who knows some things can't be fixed and some places aren't worth returning to. Observe how others react when you demand basic respect. If they deny, attack, manipulate, or withdraw to punish you, you have your answer. You don't need to keep trying. True respect doesn't come after begging, explaining, or sacrificing. It flows naturally in healthy relationships, or it doesn't if you're in the wrong place. And once you see that, freedom begins. If you've stayed somewhere that slowly eroded your confidence, comment one word: I leave. Like this if you're learning to prioritize respect over familiarity. And if you want to keep building the strength to avoid returning to unworthy places, subscribe to the channel. Because the Stoic path isn't just theory, it's action. And sometimes the first action is a decisive step away from a place that made you forget your own worth. Number 9, leaving isn't escaping, it's evolving. We grow up in a world that glorifies endurance, where phrases like "don't give up" or "try one more time" are seen as badges of strength. So leaving, a toxic relationship, a job that no longer fits, a cycle that erodes your mind, is often labeled as weakness or running away. But the truth a Stoic knows well is this: leaving isn't escaping, it's progress. It's the evolution of your consciousness. When you stay in something just because you fear judgment for leaving, you're not living by reason, but by the emotion of fear. And if anything contradicts Stoic thinking, it's letting emotions dictate your choices. A Stoic doesn't leave out of hatred. They leave because they've realized what they're clinging to no longer nurtures their inner growth. Maturity demands letting go, and letting go is sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself. Many stay in toxic relationships because they don't want to be seen as impatient, giving up halfway, or ungrateful for what they have. But if you've given time, effort, and honesty and still receive only hurt or indifference, that's no longer a relationship worth investing in. It's a lesson, and every lesson, once learned, needs an end. Not because you're lacking, but because you've evolved into a version of yourself that no longer fits the old circumstances. Leaving may look like an end, but in truth, it's the start of a new cycle of life. One where you're no longer trapped in the struggle to hold on to a shadow of something. Leaving is how you declare to the world and to yourself that you deserve a healthier, truer, clearer way of living. A Stoic doesn't see attachment as absolute. They see it as a mental contract, meaningful only when both sides nurture each other's presence with respect, understanding, and goodwill. When one side breaks that promise, the contract is void. Leaving isn't betrayal, it's staying true to your philosophy. I don't stay where I must trade my inner peace for acceptance. True evolution is never loud. It begins quietly with an inner decision. I'm enough to stop proving myself. I'm enough to know loyalty doesn't mean clinging to something broken, but staying true to the truth, that I'm no longer who I was, and I need a new environment to grow. That's why, for a Stoic, leaving isn't a step back. It's a step out of a confining space into the air of mental freedom. You might feel lonely, you might be misunderstood, you might not get immediate support, but you'll gain the most precious thing, your own companionship. You'll start hearing the inner voice drowned out before by the noise of pointless arguments. Your mind will feel clearer, your wisdom deeper, your life truer, because you chose to evolve, not repeat. If someone asks, "Why did you give up?" look them in the eye and say, "I didn't give up. I moved forward, just not in the old direction." A Stoic doesn't need to lash out or rebel. They just need one clear action: to leave without looking back, without regret, without needing to be understood. Evolution doesn't require others' approval. It only asks for your courage to begin. If you're facing the choice to leave something that no longer feels right, comment one word: "I evolve." Like this if you've ever felt lighter after leaving a place that drained you with effort. And if you want to continue evolving deeply, from mind to action, subscribe to the channel. Because you don't need anyone to validate your change. You just need one clear decision: I deserve better. Number 10, let your composure be the final word. There are moments in life when the last word you speak will never be enough to change anything. You can justify, persuade, or strive for a fair ending, or at least to be understood. But in the journey of mental maturity, you'll realize the final word isn't a sentence, it's a state. And composure is the ultimate declaration of someone no longer controlled by external forces. A Stoic doesn't argue to win. They don't linger to explain. They don't react to gain approval. They seek one thing: self-mastery. When everything is unraveled, when there's nothing left to salvage, when the other person keeps attacking or denying what you've given, your calm is the most powerful proof you've risen above their game. Nothing unsettles toxic people more than your unshakable calm. When they attack, you don't rage. When they slander, you don't defend. When they try to drag you into an emotional spiral, you don't budge, because you're no longer living the old way. You don't react on impulse anymore. You choose. You act deliberately. You control yourself. And that control is the highest language of inner strength. As long as you lose control, you're still swayed. When you lash out to defend your view or send long messages to explain, you're still giving them space in your mind. But when you no longer feel the need to say more, when you can walk away with a smile, carrying no unspoken words, you've reached a new level of freedom. No one can touch you, not because they don't try, but because you've left no anchor for them to latch onto. Composure isn't coldness. It's courage forged through every time you refuse to be swept into emotion. It's the ability to see every twist and turn without letting anything define your worth. It's the highest act of someone who knows, I don't need to speak to prove anything to those unwilling to listen. Your composure will unsettle many. They'll call you detached, heartless, even cruel. But that's just the perspective of those used to manipulating others through emotion. They can't stand that you no longer react as before. They don't know what to do with your silence. And you don't need to fix your image in their eyes. You just need to keep your mind unshaken. That's the deepest farewell. A Stoic doesn't need to say, "I'm okay." They live as someone who is. They don't need to write, "I don't care anymore." They've truly let go. They don't need to act strong. They are strong because they've taken back control from others' hands. They place their hands on the wheel of their inner life and choose what deserves their presence. Not through emotion, but through reason and self-respect. You can't control what others say, do, or think about you. But you can control how you walk away. If you leave in anger, they'll remember that. If you leave in chaos, they'll use it as an excuse. But if you leave in serenity, with nothing left to say, nothing left to prove, that's the only ending that can't be distorted. No one can twist composure. It speaks for itself. You may never be fully understood by them, but that no longer matters because you understand yourself, and that understanding gives you the strength to leave without hatred, without fleeing, without demands, just to walk cleanly, clearly, decisively, because you know what you're walking toward, a version of yourself no longer manipulated, no longer swayed by small waves, and no longer needing others to complete your story. If you've had a moment where you chose not to say more, not because you had nothing to say, but because no one deserved to hear it, Comment one word, silence. Like this if you've used composure as your final punctuation, not back and forth words. And if you want to keep training to hold your inner state steady no matter the world's chaos, subscribe to the channel. Because the truth is, composure isn't a destination. It's a choice you make every day. You can't control how others treat you, but you can control how you respond. And sometimes the wisest response is no response at all. Sometimes silent forgiveness and a step away are the clearest declarations of your inner strength. If you're in an emotional battle, if you feel drained by relationships that sap your energy, remember, you have the right to withdraw your attention. You have the right to stay silent. You have the right to leave without a goodbye. And above all, you have the right to choose peace without anyone's permission. Let your composure answer every attack. Let your withdrawal be the loudest statement of your self-worth. Let self-mastery become your language of living, quiet yet undeniable. If you found value in this journey, don't forget to like this video to spread the Stoic philosophy to more people. Leave a comment sharing which part of this video woke you up the most, so others can learn from your experience. And if you want to continue this journey of building inner strength, subscribe to the channel now. True peace begins with a decision, and that decision you can make right now.